Hello and welcome to another episode of The Truth About B2B Sales, where myself, Henry Walton, and my brother and business partner, Richard Walton, try and deliver nuggets of wisdom about B2B sales as quickly and efficiently as possible. So Rich, today we're talking about the discovery disconnect. In your opinion, what is the discovery disconnect? Let's start with the number one thing that you think people are getting wrong with discovery.
Well, they're not actually really paying attention to the title, discovery. Discovery should be as it sounds. You are trying to uncover as much as you possibly can about the people that you are talking to. What are their problems? Who are the users? Who's involved in the decision-making process? What have they done before? What's worked? What hasn't? Someone told me the other day that the ratio of talking to listening, if you are the salesperson in the discovery process, should be 20%, 20 to 80. The person that you're talking to should be talking 80% of the time. You should be talking 20% of the time. And it doesn't happen. People come in there, they ask a couple of questions, and then they just want to start talking. They don't listen, they don't ask follow-up questions, and I don't think they're deeply interested. Henry, you and I have talked a lot about the evolution of sales being more one of positioning yourselves as a partner rather than as a salesperson. We have to deal with the fact that consumers are incredibly educated now. I mean, insanely educated before we start talking to them. They know as much. It's so easy for people to find out as much about what you do and your product and service, as you probably do. So actually, they're not looking for you to talk through all the features and this and that. They want to find out if you are the right partner for them. Is this someone that I can rely on and that I can trust? And that comes through asking great questions and listening and not rushing the process. If you have to have 2 discovery calls, have 2. The pitch can come later. And the better your discovery, the more customized your pitch can be. That's what it means to me.
I always like the comparison here of, the general practitioner versus the spinal surgeon. The GP that's sort of busy, maybe they're not paid that well, they don't really care, they're not taking the problem that quickly, and they'll ask some routine questions, and then that's kind of it. Versus, imagine going to see like a spinal surgeon in Harley Street that's really genuinely trying to understand kind of what the issues are. I think that's a good way to look at it. And I think there's 2 things that you said that are absolutely key. So one is a genuine interest. And there's some interesting conversations here around training, coaching, and playbooks. But discovery questions, especially if you're formalizing a process and you're trying to train reps, the discovery process is not just a series of questions that you ask and you have to ask, and then that has to go into the CRM. They are prompts that allow you to have a really meaningful conversation, engagement with someone. And they won't do it on their own. You can't just go through the questions and then kind of tick it off and go, okay, cool, I understand that. The follow-up part is how you understand the depth, because on a surface level, people will kind of just give you 5%, 10% of the truth. And it's the follow-up, the old kind of Toyota 5 whys. Okay, so why does it work like that? If you're talking about someone's problems, you have this problem and what happens? And then what happens if you don't solve it? And then what happens? And I think this is what people rush discovery, and they're trying to kind of get through it, and they're looking for things that confirm their belief so they can get on to kind of selling and going, oh yeah, this is a great partnership. But actually they haven't really uncovered the truth. So from that point on, they're always missing the target a little bit. They're talking about the wrong features. They're talking about the wrong service. They're talking about the wrong outcomes because they've rushed discovery and they haven't gone deep enough. They haven't understood the core or the kind of real depth of the issues and what will happen to that person or that department or that company if they don't solve them.
Yeah, I think you said something just now, which, in my experience, having worked with numerous sales teams over the last 25 years, it's when people feel rushed.
Yeah.
That's when good people make mistakes. And quite often that can come from leadership. I know of one example when I went into a company and their conversion rate had dropped massively. They didn't know why. And I started looking at all the historical data, and there was like a time period, and it dropped off. And I tried to understand what strategic decisions had been made in that time period. And a sales director had come in, they were growing fast, and they had dropped the amount of time that they were allowed to spend on discovery from 45 minutes to 30 minutes. And that had resulted in a direct drop in conversion rate. And there is this tendency for sales leaders to rely on activity metrics. The more discovery calls you make, surely that must result in more clients. Surely it must do, because you're having more conversations, when the opposite is actually true. So, yeah. And I've got to be honest with you, when I'm rushed, I've been guilty of it as well. And I kick myself afterwards.
I love to see reps spending an hour and a half on discovery, even if they have 45 minutes, because there's two things that happen. One is that, they're going deeper. Two, but they're also, if you're able to speak with someone for an hour and a half, even if you're speaking about other stuff, you're developing some sort of relationship with that person. If you're spending 20 minutes on discovery, you haven't managed to do anything. You've gone through some cursory questions. You haven't built any rapport. You haven't been able to scratch the surface. Those deals never, ever work well.
Yeah. I was giving a talk about 6 months ago, and one of the questions I got asked was, did I think that introverts or extroverts made better salespeople? And I said, actually, I think it is introverts because they are better listeners, whereas extroverts like to talk. And when I've hired what I would call kind of face-to-face salespeople, one of the things that I would always do is take them out for dinner. And one of the final steps of the interview is to assess actually how good at conversation are they. And conversation, as the word suggests, is conversing. Can they listen? Can they ask good questions? Do they appear interested? I just want to finish off by sharing a bit of advice I was given 5 years ago, which I've remembered to this day. It's very, very hard to fake authenticity, to fake being interested in someone. So what I always tell people is ask questions that you're actually interested in the answer to, even if they're not related to what you're selling. That allows you to find a hook, that allows you to start having a real conversation, and then you can start building trust and creating a proper relationship.
Just one very quick note. I found that I worked with years ago taught me this, and he did something. Discovery also, people often think that discovery just happens in the first call, and discovery is something that happens at every stage of your process. When someone new is brought in, or you're going through the pitch, or legal comes in, it's an ongoing thing. You're constantly trying to understand whether the landscape has changed, whether there's new objections that have come in, whether there's new needs. But he used to do this thing in a pitch where we'd go through a certain part, and then at the end of that section would say, is this something that you imagine would help you? And then say nothing. And sometimes it was really interesting because the pause, there would be like a 20-second pause, and most people don't like those pauses, and then they rush it. And that 20-minute pause, it wouldn't speak until someone else on the other side had spoken. And this really gets out of the way of people just going, yep, and they nod, and then you move on because you think you've got agreement. But you haven't, because people nod and go, yep, all the time. That's not what they mean. But when you leave that big pause, then people would say, actually, there's something I don't really understand, or there's something that's making me feel uncomfortable. Great, you're back into discovery mode. You spend 15 minutes, because there's no point going beyond if you haven't dealt with that kind of issue or that piece of discovery there and then. So it comes back to that rushing thing of giving the space for people to chat and then being able to respond.
100%. Great. Thanks, everyone. See you
Cheers all.
next time.